and we are constantly almost staying under the minus. So this will really murder your bass sound and your low end. Welcome to another episode of Pimp My Tune. This is the third episode and it looks like community is enjoying it quite a bit. For today's episode, I have a submission from Jonathan, and he says that he's currently working on a melodic techno track and he wants me to take a look at the mix down. But other than that, I will shut up now and let's sit down and pimp some tune. Even though he has frozen everything, there was like issue with the kick. I think he used kick too, and forget that. But he has the mixed down version, so the original track sounds like this. At first look, honestly, there doesn't feel like there's much issue. But the moment you take a listen a bit closer, you actually hear a lot of issues in this track. And I will help you with the first one. The first one is a very obvious mistake that is missed a lot by producers. And take Adjust utility. Again, listen one more time and see what happens when I click a button here. The track turns into a complete mush, and the reason being is that actually I take a look at the track before, so I know more or less what happened. So there are a couple of elements, they are really on top of each other because they are sonically very close to each other. So to mix that, I think Jonathan tried to do some mid-side EQing, and one thing is that when you do mid-side EQing, it's super easy to mess up with the stereo field, and it's exactly what happened in this one with most of the elements. I know it's a very hot topic or very trendy thing to do a lot of mid-side EQing, but you have to really understand it, and you have to be really careful about your stereo field, otherwise this will happen. And the second problem, if you take a look at the track, let me put a span and show you visually as well while you are listening. Take a look at the span, how the frequencies look, and try to focus on the middle frequencies, like let's say between 500 to up to 2,000-3,000. So try to listen there and see if you can actually differentiate the different elements. So most of the time when you do a techno track or a house track, oftentimes you will see the shape like a thumb here, and then it will go down, and then you will at least a flat curve or another at least thumb. In this track, the high end is a bit quiet, so it's below the regular level, and then mid is really pushed each other, and there is really hard to feel or hear in a dynamic range. So dynamic range means, for example, if you hit the plug, it goes up all the way and then goes down, and then you can hear all the way. And if you can hear it, you can spot the dynamic range of that sound. But if you put a lot of sounds on top of each other, let's say a noise, you won't be able to hear any dynamic stuff in it because the volumes are constantly the same. And we are exactly having this issue, like the kick is almost feeling like not hitting enough, and then everything is on top of each other. We don't have any room to breathe, to hear the dynamic range and enjoying the track. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually start for this one from the beginning, and I'm going to start with a kick. And I'm going to turn off everything because I don't think this could be solved fast. We have to start from the beginning and do it one by one. So I just loaded my kick sample and it sounds like this. Why I picked this, I wanted to have a bit more cleaner thumb. You can definitely hear it, and a slide tail so that I can feel the sub. I'm just going to bring on the OTT. You can really do with any dynamic processing tool. What I'm going to do, put everything down and then put everything up here. Then I'm going to push this and then volume up this. I'm just pushing this high ends a bit so that my thumb gets a bit brighter. I really don't want more than that. The other thing that I'm going to do is just pick another EQ, almost the same thing honestly. Push a bit here to see if I can bring even more pronunciation to the kick. somewhere around here is fine. I'm fine with it. This should be good enough. At the moment, the thumb is a bit too obvious, but once you play all these different elements in the track, it will be hard to really understand what's going on. And the second thing that we had here, these tom sounds, and it sounds like this. I think the issue here is that it's a bit too weak. It doesn't match the kick that we are using. And I also see that we have a bit group processing here. It's really a big boost here, although it sounds fine with the kick. I will keep this one and I will come back later on with the track. What I would like to do now, just put some samples for, just 808 samples for the tom. Just put the tom samples, and if I play together now, it sounds like this. The main difference here, what I did is basically, when I did the tom sample here, I tune it down a little bit so that I get the darker sound but still in key, and then I have another one. This is a bit brighter, so up and down feel that we can get. The thing that I'm considering now is shortening this up because these are a bit too long. 808 samples come often a bit too long, to be honest. And then I slightly changed the pattern because it was just like that bum bum and then bum bum bum. I think original one is this one, but I want to have a bit difference so that I have a bit more groovy, a bit more deep house feel, because I think this track goes really well with that vibe. So if I play together, and obviously a slight EQ here to just cut super lows. Again, why actually I prefer this type of toms, because this tom's a bit smoother again, and in the original track we had this really growling bass. So if we try to pick a tom sample that's also kind of growling or a little distorted, then we will have a bit problem with trying to use almost two different same things, if that makes sense. So that's the reason that I picked that. And the third part, if you take a look at here, this will be good to go now. And we have the basses, two of them, and they sound like this. I think the bass could be better, or we can also utilize the same bass. The one thing that I want to do basically start with the sub here, and if I play this, I actually don't like the constant sub because you can actually cut this off like this, and then it will also help with this like a pumping effect a bit more than just having a single long noise. We will side chain it to kick, hence that pumping effect, but doing it this way even helps with that. I see we have a lot of disabled stuff going on here. Let me just take them off and instead put a compressor and side chain it to kick. And I would like to have a look ahead. And the one final thing that could be nice to consider is giving a slight attack and release. And I will just put an EQ to make sure that we are not getting those super highs. And after that, I will actually compress this one a little bit, simply because this is a sub bass and I really don't want to have too much changes in it. And one thing that we should make sure that the velocities are same, yes, so that we are having exactly the same hit every time. For the sub, that's really important, and then I'm gonna just compress it slightly. To be honest, it looks fine, but let's make sure of it. And let's mix this with the kick. And for the serum part, I'm not really 100% sure about this. I think I would like to change something a bit simpler. I'm thinking like, what if we could just take a diva and get a simple bass sound, which means that we can go to template and just get a mini mono and then go here and play. Let's put this here as well and solo this. Now we have really kind of more vintage sound on the bass. What I would like to do here is, though, we have a sub bass and we don't need all this sub coming from this guy. So what I'm gonna do, cut this guy and play the sub so that I can blend a little bit better and can hear actually how they blend. Volume that down and play together with the kick. I think it sounds good enough. The only thing is missing the sidechain to the kick. Again, I really like to sidechain everything to the kick on my low end, but this one will be a bit less aggressive. And yeah, that's good to go. I realized that he actually sidechained the tom to here. Now we cannot see it, but let's do it ourselves. So we can go here and sidechain it to the toms. I just want to make sure that actually when the toms hit, we can hear that, so that enjoying that dynamic range of toms, it really brings, they really become ear candy in this kind of track. So I really enjoy that. Okay, this is the low end. This is good. And we should take next step now. We have the kick and the drums. And the drums part, we will see that there are a lot of hi-hats and so on. And there are a couple of different issues with that we have to solve. I want you to take a close listen when I play just the drums now. Just take a look. Most of the things are actually sitting just too close to each other and they're occupying the same space. What I would like to do, probably, I would go a bit different clap, not that distorted, not that rich. So what I'm going to do is basically just turn this off and come back later on, depending on when I see that there's a place for the clap. For that part and the rest part of the part here, we are going to take it one by one. So I'm going to listen to this guy first. There are a lot of things going on here, and the sound is kind of having a reverb, a tail, and it's also, I think, distorted a little bit. So I really am not sure if I want my hi-hat this rich, this mushy for this type of track. So what I'm going to do, unfreeze this guy and take a look at what we have. I'm going to pick the decapitator off to start with, and then I'm going to take a look at here, because I think we just cut too much here. So take a look here. Exactly. I want to have a bit of those tails. And then maybe boost slightly here. And the one thing I'm feeling like it's a bit too stereo, I'm going to bring down the width. However, I'm still not really happy. I'm thinking of using the gate to actually cut off those tails a little bit. Let's do something like this. I know it's really easy to go with those shaker in the background, but the question is, do you really need all these different loops with all the small things in it? If you overdo it, they will really start occupying the same space, and there will be a lot of those small things going on in the background, and then you end up like don't hearing anything basically. And this is what I'm trying to avoid now. I'm going to try to bring down all the small things, and then I can actually pick up the things that I want to add, rather than just putting everything and then trying to figure out what to do. And if play this with the track and try to mix it a bit. I like to bring this down quite a bit on. Here we go. Maybe I can even open up a bit more here. And then we will take a look at the second sound over here, and it sounds like this. Let me just unfreeze this. And I want to play these two together to see the levels basically. And together with the track. I want to just EQ slightly. And there's also pans a bit right and left, and I'm not really sure of this one either, so I'm going to put this in the middle. Because this one is going around all the way, and I really don't want to put everything on the sides and then have those mono problems later on. I think this is good to go. Again, I will come back and do one final mix of this one. And we have the ride here as well. Just for now, I will avoid it because I don't want to put everything on top of each other in the beginning. Then it gets a bit too loud and it's easier to lose the objectivity. And I will close this and take the next one, which is the white percussions. Sounds like this. Again, there are a lot of things going on in the background. Like I mentioned earlier, I try to keep it clean in the beginning and then add the things up later on if I need to. And I'm going to do the exact same thing here. I mean, they're here and they're a bit stuff, but I really don't care too much about those ones because of the timing, because trying to make things a bit faster. So it sounds like this now. It sits a bit tighter, but I think we just need to add just a bit more click to the hi-hat because it's so washy at the moment still. It's like sound, and I want a bit click in the beginning. So let me add a super short closed hi-hat sample on top of that. So what I did basically, add super simple closed hi-hat from Production Music Live. Really a bit richer, a bit brighter, but it's super short. I also cut the tail a bit off, and together with those, the other hi-hat, it sounds like this. It just brings this like initial hit, and it makes the sound a bit natural, I will say. Just a small thing, but I guess just makes it a bit tighter in a sense. But that's it for the percussions. Again, I will come back and try to fix this a bit more if I see an issue, if there is an issue. The thing that we should take a look at now is actually the main instruments, and this is I think this is the part that we really need to spend some time on because I see a couple of different issues. So we will start with this guy, and it sounds like this. I see that there's a lot of effects, so let's take a look what's happening here. What I'm going to do basically turn everything off because I think this part doesn't need too much stuff going on. So I just click the 0 so that I turn off everything. And then I'm going to just consolidate this part so that I can volume this up a little bit. Depending on the feel that I can actually maybe come back and use also another gate because you can definitely hear the tail. Tail is not something bad, but if it's too much, it can be like make the issues like that we had before. So if I just mix this up to start with. I think we need to spice this up, but again, I don't want to use too much reverb, but I'm considering a delay effect to make it a bit more ambient, make it a bit more interesting as well, add that secondary character to the sound. And those type of delays really work nicely with this type of plug sound. So let's add the new return track and add the delay. And I'm just gonna go for this dotted synth patch over here. If I play and send a bit to there. Let me solo this. The one thing that I'm missing here is actually sidechaining with the kick again, so that our delay is having this nice groove on top of that. So let's just copy paste the compressor here. We had something here, and if I play with the track one more time. There is a too long delay on top of that, so we should fix that. Let's bring that down. Where is my feedback? We can solve this so that you can hear a bit better. Again, as a last stage, these are the small things, small tuning that we can do, and this is good. But we have another issue here. I think this is the source of the issue, actually. One of the main source of the issue is this sound here. It sounds like this. At once, you don't feel like there's an issue, but let me show you something. Let's unfreeze this and let's put an imager. And let's put somewhere here. And let me put that. So take a look at the imager here when I play the sound. Do you see how often it ends up a minus values, which means that the sound is phasing, so this will probably cancel out other sounds in the track in the frequencies that going below 0. And this is something that you should be really careful about it. And oftentimes when you mix the track with the headphones, you don't see or hear these issues, and it could be easily done or overlooked. So what I would suggest here is actually completely scrapping the sound, and not because of its phasing, but because this sound is playing all the time continuously, like dun 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 dun, and this one is also kind of playing all the time, even though there's one empty space between the notes. It's basically a bit distorted version of it, but it is a different note. So this too crashes a lot when you play together. You completely lose what is playing what, and if you are going for a super ambient track, it doesn't really matter that much, like the sounds are getting into each other. But if you are doing this type of tracks, I would really suggest to find out something that is more contrasting and is something really adding value to the track. And I think this time this sound doesn't cut for it. So what I'm going to do, delete this up and come up with a super short, super fast some support element here. So what I did, I tried to find something that could be a contrasting sound. So when you have this type of heavy plug sound, a contrasting sound, for example, could be a bit more low octave bass sound, or a bit more distorted, less plucky, constant sound. So in this case, I wanted to keep the energy. So I tried to find something a bit high pitched and a bit more distorted. So I find this preset on my preset pack, and it sounds like this. It's a classic techno sound, really. And this is completely different sound than the plug sound itself. So when I layer them together, they will be both there and they won't fight for the same space. The reason being, again, this sounds a bit high. Again, I can still make a bit more space for the plug, but I think at the moment that means that maybe 10% better. And then to make it super efficient, I think this is good enough, good to go. My only thinking was, okay, we have a plug sound, find something contrasting with the energy so that I can still keep the energy feel of the track while I'm alternating the sound or changing the sound. And the last part was this sound here. Sounds like this. It's kind of a similar sound that we have. I will just push it down a little bit and mix a bit. I'm just using it more like a drone sound rather than just this heavy synth sound. So that's the reason that I'm really pushing it down with the volume. Again, we can come back later on and take a look at this. And then afterwards we have this pad sounds. It's actually a simple sound playing all the time. The issue here is that this chord. And this chord is something that's actually utilized quite a bit in more classic main room techno. So if I play the sound, you will hear it. Let me play it. Let me unfreeze it. Again, we have the same issue here as well. Like I see that a lot of mid-side EQing going on. I don't know what these are, to be honest. Maybe he tried to solve the issue later on, but in the mix down, I think the issue is still there. So if you take a look at the span over here, this is actually extremely dangerous, and that's also one of the issues that we are hearing. This is peaking around between 100 to 600 hertz, so it's like a bass area, low bass area, mid bass area. And we are constantly almost staying under the minus, so this will really murder your bass sound and your low end. And what I'm going to do is basically this first. This chord is very dissonant chord. It's very good for techno sound if you want to make a dramatic main room tech, but if you have a more melodic techno stuff and playing your kick, or playing your bass like this, ups and downs, so it is melodic bass, I think it's a really not good idea to make a pad sound all of it. So what I'm going to do, I'm gonna scrap this pad sound, and just put a simple pigments, I will say the tune, and put a simple chord progression just following the bass, really nothing more. So I just use a simple pigment sound. This is really super simple patch, but I'm doing it just using the wavetable and putting a bit unison so that we have this a bit darker, more low end pad sound like this. And basically the bass notes are here, so I'm just keeping the bass notes in mind, because again, this is a melodic techno. Try to keep the key of the track to make it a bit smoother. And if I play it with the other things in the track now, and of course we should add a compression to on top of that to kick. Again, the changes are always subtle, like you make something from maybe okay to better, and those 10%, 5% better always add up on top of each other and makes this track most of the time more coherent, more just better sounding. So this is the simple thing that we have done, again changing the chord progression and changing the sound so that we have a bit more coherent sound. And afterwards we have the vocal chops. And I think these are coming from the Exhale. They sound like this. I see that there are a lot of effects. I'm gonna turn those off because I'm missing some of the stuff. So probably I'm not hearing the original version, but if you play one more time. I think this is much cleaner to my ear. The thing that I'm missing here, I'm gonna comp these vocals a bit and change a bit too much, because at the moment, if you take a look at just the MIDIs here, we are always having something here, like things are playing all the time non-stop. And once you have the vocals, I will try to suggest avoiding it, because vocals are not lead sounds, that you shouldn't have it all the time. And this is not a pop sound neither. Pop music neither. Try to let things breathe a little bit. Try to use your weapons more efficiently. So what I'm going to do, take these guys, tune these down like 12 semitones, so that I have like a comped version, like a darker version, so that I can support them a little bit, so they can get thicker. And then I'm going to just take probably this off and put it somewhere here, so that there is a space between, and maybe take this off. So let me do it quickly. So what I did, super simple. I just added a bit glue compressors because we have a lot of sound, so I don't want to really have any issues with the ranges. And then I slightly boosted, not really even slightly, 6 dB boost on the high end, so that I can get a bit high end to the vocals. The important thing over here, again, as you can see, I deleted this part and I moved it here so that I have a space between, so they not repeat each other, and also took off these so that we are not bombarded by the vocals all the time. And the other thing that I done is, this is the original sound. and it was slightly panned to the right. What I did basically, take another piece and tune it down 12 semitones, and then play with the formant by choosing the Complex Pro here. So that made the sound a bit more like a man sound, and it sounds like this. And again, pan it a bit even more so this would right to the original sound if I play together. Just supports the original sound. If this was my track, I will probably go a bit more crazy with this part. I like to like really add all those supports, even though those are really tiny stuff. It really adds up, especially with the vocals, and make them much more professional and stronger. But you could add the harmonics, for example. This one is an octave below, but you could maybe put a -5 semitones down, and then that will be the harmonic perfect fifth, and adds another kind of a vibe to the track. And then you can even add maybe melodyne and play with the pitch, and then even get more drastic sounds. But I think for this one, this was enough. I did the same thing here, pitch down, and then moved even more left. This was in center, moved a bit left, and they sound like this now. Again, they are barely there, but you hear it even though you are not realizing it. And all together now with the track, it sounds like this. The one final part is fixing this FX. Sounds like this. Let me unfreeze it. The issue that I'm seeing is maybe a bit more EQing. Again, I will probably fix this one in the total mixdown. So let me give me a couple of minutes so I can go one by one and see if I miss something, and then come back, show you the final version versus the original one. As usual, I forget to add the clap, obviously again. So what I did, just went back and added a clap sound, and the clap sounds like this. This is really a simple clap, and I just have a slight EQ, nothing else. And I tune it down a bit 2 octaves because I felt like it should be a bit darker so that we can have a nice frequency area that we can utilize. And other than that, most of the things were like just putting a bit down, a bit up, nothing really changed at all. And I activated the right back to the track. And let me play one more time. And yeah, that was it. Again, I think the most important thing over here, see the separation between instruments and track being a bit more dynamic. And again, this sound selection or instrument selection is made a bit more, let's say, intentionally. I hope you enjoyed the track, and thanks again for the submission for the Jonathan. I hope you enjoyed the twist that I made for you for your track. And again, if you'd like to send your submission for the next episode, the email address is biskuwifeedback@gmail.com. I will add the link below so that you can just use it and send your own track. Just don't forget to send either short loop or a single sound or single loop. And don't forget to freeze everything. And you can also send WAV file if you are using other DAWs, so it doesn't really matter too much, I will say. Other than that, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you learned something, and I will catch you in the next one. Goodbye.